The Man Who Wasn't There is a 2001 Coen Brothers film. In 1949, Ed Crane, a dissatisfied barber, suspects his wife, Doris, of having an affair with her employer, Dave. Ed comes across a man looking for an investor in a dry cleaning business. Ed blackmails Dave into giving him $10,000 for the investment. When Dave realizes who is behind it, he tries to strangle Ed, but is killed in self-defense. The police arrest the wrong suspect, Doris. She hangs herself in jail. Later, Ed is mistakenly arrested for the murder of the man who wanted to start the dry cleaning business. Dave actually killed him, mistaking him for the blackmailer. Yes, there are a lot of twists and turns and mistaken identities, but stay with me. Ed pleads guilty in hopes of the judge showing him mercy due to the bizarre circumstances. He does not, and sentences Ed to death by electric chair. Ed contemplates how he got there, sees the full picture of his life, and is executed. Although not present in their entire filmography, since the turn of the 21st century, the Coen Brothers films have become noticeably existential, and The Man Who Wasn't There is one of the clearest examples.
Look at me close. That the closer they looked, the less sense it would all make.
Human. This barber.
There's a lot of confusion about existentialism in philosophical corners and debate because of how broad the term is. One could say that existentialism is any philosophical theory or approach that emphasizes the existence of the individual as the responsible agent acting under some level of free will, and any philosophical theory that emphasizes the importance of living sincerely or authentically, but that covers a wide variety of views on metaphysics and ethics, not to mention the disparate opinions of everyone from Søren Kierkegaard to Jean-Paul Sartre, spanning a long, long time. So let's focus in on some commonalities among existentialism and how they relate to this film. Part of the bedrock of both existentialist thought and The Man Who Wasn't There is the notion that existence precedes essence. This handy phrase simply means that the most important consideration for individuals is simply that they are individuals. That means they act independently and are responsible, conscious beings. This refers to the former term in the phrase, existence, and not what labels, roles, and other definitions and categories the individuals fit. This refers to the latter term in the phrase, essence. Sartre, perhaps, explained it best. What is meant here by saying that existence precedes essence? It means, first of all, man exists, turns up, appears on the scene, and only afterwards defines himself. If man, as the existentialist conceives him, is indefinable, it is because at first he is nothing. Only afterward will he be something, and he himself will have made what he will be. That does not discount other definitions, but if existentialists accept that existence precedes essence, then it creates a kind of hierarchy of importance. In The Man Who Wasn't There, this is made clear right away. In the first line of the film, Ed narrates who he is by saying, "Yeah, I worked in a barber shop, but I never considered myself a barber." Ed acknowledges his individuality, his existence, and rejects his most common external definition, his essence. Ed is called the modern man in the film, and existentialism is a modern way of thinking. In the Abrahamic faiths, for example, humanity was created by God deliberately and with specific ideas or purposes in mind. A plan. So in this context, the essence, meaning nature and characteristics of humanity, existed in the mind of God before any actual humans existed in the world. In this way of thinking, it is the opposite. Essence precedes existence. Throughout the course of the film, people ask for Ed by name. Detectives and others. He responds to that, though he prefers not to say much at all. And halfway through the film, upon realizing how the world sees him, what his life is, how invisible he has allowed himself to become, he finally relents, narrating again to the audience and in defeat, calling himself the barber. When Ed's lawyer, Freddie Riedenschneider, makes his big speech to the jury, he does not refer to Ed by name once. He calls him the barber. He removes his individuality, reversing the hierarchy of importance, and tells the jury that they cannot convict this barber because he is exactly the same as themselves. It would be like tying a noose around their own necks, he says. He takes Ed away, the existence, the individuality, and tries to fool the jury into thinking of him as only the barber.
No one saw me. I was the barber.
Another existential trait of the film is that of angst. The liberation of ourselves as individuals has its downside. Kierkegaard said that while animals were guided solely by instinct, human beings both enjoy and dread the freedom of choice. Ed is responsible for his life choices. He may have a dissatisfying relationship with his wife, but he chose to marry her and chose to remain with her until her suicide. He does not want to be the barber, so he endeavors to find a new line of work in dry cleaning, but his poor decisions lead to disaster. Part of the angst of our freedom is about moral freedom, and the concern that if we are individuals and not governed by higher powers, what will our choices be? Ed's choices are criminal, although he is convicted for a separate crime he did not commit. The infinite possibilities of free will create impossible-to-predict scenarios, hence all the mistaken identities. Kierkegaard called this the dizziness of freedom. His example was a man standing on the edge of a precipice. The man fears falling, and the man feels an impulse to fling himself over the edge. Even if he did not want to jump, the realization that he even has this option is angst. It is the burden of freedom, making moral choices as a consequence of free will. Uncertainty is part of angst, and it is definitely part of this film. Freddy tells Ed that he plans to use Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in his defense. In physics, the uncertainty principle states that the more precisely the position of some particle is determined, the less precisely its momentum can be known, and vice versa. Freddy, perhaps falsely, interprets this on a more social and philosophical level, suggesting that the more one looks at something, anything, the less clear it becomes. In the end, Ed says that he sees all the choices he made like turns in a maze, but at the end of his life, he is able to pull back and see it as a whole, and that the complete picture of his life is only now known to him. This brings to mind a quote from Kierkegaard. It is perfectly true, as philosophers say, that life must be understood backwards. But they forget the other proposition, that it must be lived forwards. Another trait of existential study is despair, and if there is one topic that is easy to spot in this film, it's this one: the loss of hope. After Dave's murder and Doris's arrest, Dave's widow Anne tells Ed that her deceased husband once saw an alien spacecraft, a flying saucer, and that it abducted him and performed experiments. Later on, Ed reads about the Roswell incident in Life magazine. He sees, or most likely dreams of seeing, a flying saucer as he prepares for his execution. He wonders if there is some greater meaning or connection to the events of his life. Actual UFOs are not to blame, this is not science fiction. They simply represent the unknown. Even though despair and hopelessness are prevalent in almost every scene in the film, the ending is not hopeless. Ed accepts his death and thinks optimistically about the possibility of an afterlife, hopeful about a new world in which he can tell Doris all the things that they don't have words for on Earth. This is actually not necessarily in contradiction to existentialism. Christian existentialism, for example, takes an indirect approach. Sticking with Kierkegaard, his version of Christian existentialism involves the conflation of God and love. When a person engages in the act of loving, he is achieving an aspect of divinity. Christian existentialism, perhaps because it might not embrace existence preceding essence, is sometimes called a leap of rationality. The most explicit reference to religion is in the beginning of the film, in which Ed says he and Doris only go to church to play bingo. But Ed shows himself to think in more abstract and even spiritual terms. Throughout the film, hair growing connects with Ed's views on life. He tells another barber that they just sweep up the hair and dispose of it, even though it is part of them. When Ed speaks of simply going through the motions of his life and waiting, he only refers to it as cutting the hair. meaning growing, aging, existing, slowly dying. When he's about to be executed, someone shaves him, removing a piece of him. Ed pontificates about this in one scene, remarking that he will put the hair in the dirt, in the earth, instead of the garbage, suggesting the value he puts on humanity. He narrates that hair grows after death. He believes in something beyond this life. Hi everyone, if you like what I do, consider clicking on the orange Patreon link below. That's how this show happens. It's also a way for you to request an episode, so check it out.